Hey, my name is Dax Hammer, and I want to show you the exact way that Jaycen Joshua mixes his 808s. And since I've learned this technique, it's been the only way that I've been mixing my 808s as well. So in one of his Mix with the Masters videos, he said, if anyone knows me and has been hip to my career, I am the master molter. I love parallel, I love molting. It's one of my favorite go-tos to give me loudness, to give me harmonics, to give me the isolated frequency. And this technique is about taking the bass and duplicating it and then treating one track as the sub range and treating the other track as the harmonics of that bass. So on the track dedicated to the sub range, he has a Pro Q and an R compressor. And on the track dedicated to the harmonics, he has a Pro Q, an R compressor, an Ibanez 808 tube screamer, and another Pro Q. And let's start with the sub range. He has that Pro Q and a bandpass filter starting at about 30 hertz and going all the way up to about 500 hertz. And that goes into an R compressor, and the exact settings that he used was on the attack, it was 48 milliseconds, and the release 5 milliseconds. He was on opto and smooth. Ratio is 4. Output gain about 5.3, and on the threshold he had it about -28, but that's going to vary depending on the level of your signal. And he was getting about 4 dB of gain reduction. So he said that he loves this plugin because he uses it for gain so that he can keep his faders at 0. So I would assume that his logic was that the low end control with the compressor was needed, but then also using that output gain to get the volume of the 808 that he was looking for without having to touch the fader. And on the harmonics track, he added another bandpass filter, which ranged from about 50 hertz to, again, close to 500 hertz as well. And the R compressor settings are exactly the same as the sub track, except for the fact that he was getting about 2 to 3 dB of gain reduction, and on the sub track, he was getting about 4 to 5 dB of gain reduction. And the reason he chose 48 milliseconds as the attack was to allow the transient to get through to add a little bit more excitement. And his go-to bass distortion is that tube screamer, and this is how he gets his distortion on the bass, how he generates those harmonics, and he just loaded it up with the factory default setting. And he said this plugin gives him what he wants because he's taken the combination of that low end, feeding it into the tube screamer, and it's making that boom, the same boom that's on the sub track, scream a little bit. And then he isolates that area with the bandpass filter from about 300 hertz up to 5,000 hertz. So let's give a listen to what this sounds like with just the bass track as it was, and then with the distortion added. So we'll mute the harmonics track for now, and let's play the original bass with the Pro Q and the compressor on. Okay, we're going to engage the harmonics section now, and here we go. Night and day. So thank you, Jaycen Joshua, for sharing this amazing technique. It's the reason why I'm pretty much using this in every single mix now. Now, it's important to note that the 808 that he was using did not have a lot of harmonics already in it. It was a pretty sub-heavy 808, so he had to create those harmonics, which would make it sound a lot better and more noticeable on smaller speakers, and also make it scream pretty much on any playback system. But what if you're mixing an 808 that already screams? Well, more than likely that's the sound that the producer already intended to have on the bass. And like I kind of touched on in my last video, which you can click the link above me to watch, is that you want to keep the mix or specific elements in the mix familiar to the producer. Because if they use that specific sounding 808 in their beat or in their production, then they're probably looking for that particular sound in the mix as well. Maybe just an enhancement of it or making that sound fit in the entire mix. So if you use this technique and then have a track dedicated just for the sub range, but then take the harmonics track and then completely reinvent the sound, it may not go over that well. Or it may, but it's risky because the artist or the producer are already so used to that particular sound. So I feel that this technique is great for producers that are trying to create their own 808 sound, or for mixers that are just trying to add some harmonics into an 808 that doesn't really have any. But a lot of us mixers are already getting 808s that are so heavily distorted, so this technique can still work great. It's just going to give you independent control of the sub range and then independent control of the range with those harmonics that are already there. So for example, maybe you need more sub energy and less of the sound of the distortion. Well, now you have independent volume control. You might need to do some compression or remove some resonances, so you have a lot more ability to control that sound. But at the end of the day, it's still the particular sound that the producer or the artist are used to. So if you like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button and that like button and the bell notification icon so that you can be notified every single time that a video releases. And it's also going to help the channel grow, which means more content for you. And that's all for this video. So until next time, may God bless you. Peace.